What's good, y'all? Here are the 4 tips from Stanford about how to prevent Zoom fatigue, and I'll hit them up front in case you don't want to watch the whole thing. Number 1, you want to shrink the Zoom screen so it's not as large. Number 2, hide yourself. So use the hide self-view feature in Zoom. Number 3, have an adjustable setup so you can be more mobile. And number 4, go audio only. Okay, if you want to watch the rest of this, I'll explain those in a little bit more depth. And then what I'll also go into is the thing that I think they missed. So, Stanford professor Jeremy Bailenson did a fairly large-scale study on Zoom fatigue. It's just in the news, it matters right now because we're spending so much time on it. So I'm going to hit those 4 pieces in a little bit more depth. The first one is to make the Zoom screen smaller. The reason that's beneficial is when you're in Zoom having a conversation with one person or with many, it's the equivalent of eye contact. The way that the faces are set up is that one face is looking at another. This is something that is intense for us. Neurologically speaking, this can trigger the fight or flight response. It's just something that can be taxing for your energy. Number 2, what you want to do is hide self-view. Now, the reason that Professor Bailenson recommends this is there's some research that shows that people who see themselves in a mirror all day tend to have lower scores on psychological wellness. There's something else known as the spotlight effect, which means when we see ourselves, we see flaws. And when we see those flaws, we amplify them in ways that we wouldn't do with others. We're just self-critical and we're harsh on ourselves. And so when you use the hide self-view feature, you don't see yourself and therefore don't criticize yourself and create that negative feeling that can come from that. Number 3 is pretty standard if you've had a desk job for a while. You know it's a good idea to get up and walk around. Well, by having a more adjustable setup, he means backing out the frame or having a keyboard that lets you back up and maybe stand up and pace a little bit. If you can still move but be within the frame and be engaged, it lets your blood flow, which is going to keep you healthier, and it's going to help reduce Zoom fatigue. And finally, go audio only. And what that means is not only turn your camera off, but get up and walk around so you're not even looking at the screen. That way, you give your brain a break. And that breathing room helps minimize Zoom fatigue. So here's what I think Stanford got wrong. Don Norman is a legendary product designer, and he talks about how when someone is having a problem with a product, when they don't know how to use it, there's a piece of tech or something like that they're not figuring out, the user tends to blame themselves. And what Don Norman is saying is that's a failure of the product designer. The person who built the product, they should have spent more time and energy, more research, creating an easy user experience so that people don't feel that frustration and blame themselves, that it ultimately comes back to the product designer. What does this have to do with meetings? Well, the person who runs the meeting is the facilitator, the person who owns the agenda, whether it's a meeting, whether it's an online session, whether it's a workshop, whatever. There's a person who is leading and guiding that session. And it is incumbent upon them to take the responsibility of making sure that people don't get Zoom fatigue. There's a lot of really easy ways to do this. One of it is just to make your material dynamic and engaging. Another one is to give people a break so they can get up and walk around and turn the camera off in the middle of it. I'm a big fan of Wes Cow's state change method that says anytime you're running an online session, you should alternate between different states of maybe Q&A, maybe solo working, maybe breakout rooms. But mixing that up adds some variety, which keeps people from getting just bored in a static meeting. So those are some quick and easy ways to do this. And another way to say that is to work on facilitation. Facilitation is a skill that you can develop, and there's tons of resources online. And in fact, I train facilitators for a living. So to wrap all this up, here are the 4 things you can do to get rid of Zoom fatigue. Number 1, shrink the Zoom screen. Number 2, hide self-view. Number 3, have a more adjustable mobile setup so you can move around. And number 4, go audio only. And finally, more important than all those things, is develop your skills at running meetings and facilitating online sessions. All right, good luck, and stay away from Zoom fatigue.